accidentally jump on a topic and it be good and us not be recording.
This is true,
Yeah, I've had that happen before.
right? We'll talk about it all before, and then it's like we miss that really good topic. Yes.
Hmm. All right, so let's get into what's going on in the dating scene right now.
Oh,
Because as you said, I've been not in the dating scene for a long time and married, etc. So,
yeah. So just to start off, I was married 11 years. Okay. And I'm divorced since 2016. So, yes, I've been out in the dating world, though the last 2 years, it's definitely slowed down. I've pulled back. I think when I first got divorced, it was something I was anxious. It was like opportunity.
mhm.
So through that, like I learned I didn't exactly know what I wanted yet. And in that, today, and also with like the emotional intelligence level and the conscious level, I feel that I'm at, um, I feel like if you're a man and you still don't know if you want kids or not, and you're almost 50 years old, like that's an issue.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that.
Like that concerns me a lot. And I'm actually like see that a lot. Like men really that don't know what they want. Exactly.
Hmm.
And I feel like immediately I know in a conversation. So right now I'm not even like entertaining like any dating apps, even though people say, oh, well, that's the way to do it. I'm not even on any right now. I'm just,
Hmm.
I want to run into it in a natural way.
Yeah.
Though, Jesse, due to coaching, I've had many men reach out to me, and I'll say at least more than a handful that have wanted to, they look for coaching, but then wanted to date in a way.
Oh.
And yeah, they do need coaching, and this is their work that they get to do. And I've definitely put them in their place. But I want to know, like, why are men contacting me if they still have a girlfriend? I mean, I know the
Yeah.
answer. So that's like,
Uh-huh.
that's a man who has some work to do. And the stories that they have behind why, oh, I told her I didn't love her and we're leaving, but like, it's challenging. I mean, it's out of integrity.
Yeah, I was talking to a buddy the other day about coaching and about specifically around relationships. And he was along the same lines that I was of men shouldn't be coaching women and vice versa, because especially if it's a single older man, they're going to find a way to, when they're confiding in you, build emotions. They might, because you're someone who they're confiding in, and it just opens up too many to for me like too many sticky situations. And I
Yes,
don't think that like a woman or a man, even if they're even in a relationship, should be confiding in someone of the opposite sex.
I agree to a degree. I agree. I hold my integrity so high and I had to shut it down like immediately
Ah,
because I like base life on integrity. Okay. Like
mhm.
I really feel I practice stoicism. And honestly, like I've been on 3 dates in 2 years. Like because I see like that's not what I want. You
Yeah.
understand? And I'm not going to
Hmm.
entertain it. And I'm happy with myself. I really find there's a lot of men who really like they talk about relationships that they want. They really don't know what it is to be in a relationship. They haven't had a man model like what you're putting out there for you and your wife, to stand in a
Hmm.
positioning. And you spoke to me about this in one of our phone calls to prep for this call in where you hold boundaries. So, I'm here like a coach. I coach women. I do coach some men, but when it comes to relationship, I don't want to coach them in relationship
Hmm.
because it does cross boundaries. And then, I got to exit out of that relationship. And
Yeah.
even though I can do a hard detour, um, how can men prep if they say they want to be in a relationship and they're looking for a relationship? How can they get real with each other? Like, how is a man supposed to like get to that point that like you crossed over to your wife? And how can I identify that?
When a man wants to be in a relationship, he's not looking for the relationship to necessarily fill a void, because we want to make sure that he's whole as a man. To get it, if you're looking for someone to get into a healthy relationship with, because there are a lot of men who just want a relationship to fill a void. So we got to make sure there's the distinction between the two. A
Well,
healthy
that's why I
relationship,
don't
not
date.
yeah,
That's why I
yeah,
don't date, because I see like, oh my God, they need work. Though, even though like, you coach, I coach, we're still in our own work. Though you could like the men that come in front of me, I'm just like, oh my God, like, how am I the source of this? It
hmm
like the universe, like the past 2 years testing me to just say, no, 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 I definitely want that relationship. Definitely that, where they have boundaries, where they show respect. I have been in relationships where there was no respect in that,
hmm
So I actually find myself hanging out with couples a lot.
hmm Yeah, and for context for the audience, kind of when you're talking about how I set boundaries, there's a couple of things that I do out of respect for my wife, and it's nothing that she's asked me to do. It's things that I've come up with on my own for respect. I don't hug other women. I hug my mom, maybe my sister, my aunt. That's about it. Okay.
Hmm.
And then I'm a guy who, when I really like people in my group, people who are my people, my friends, their wives, I like to give people a hard time if I like you. I really do. I like to mess with you, poke, prod, but I will not do that to women, because I don't want it to come across as flirting, because giving someone a hard time can be conflated as being flirtatious, because it's fun to poke and prod and give someone a hard time.
And then it
But
continue
when
in a
there's fun,
Mhm. You're out of integrity.
yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. So I don't even do that with women. I will not give them a hard time
Yeah.
because of that. Like, out of respect, I don't ever want anyone to think that there's any intention of flirting. So another reason why I don't even give out hugs.
Yeah. So I'm either around, I have to tell you, men who are just like you, they're all married and practice that.
Mhm.
And it's beautiful to see, right? Or I find men who are totally like they don't even know what to do with themselves, or in defensiveness why they're behaving that way. So what has been missing in their lives? I keep saying, I know what's been missing in their lives to not know that their other women aren't holding them accountable.
Yeah, and there's the part where, for a handful of generations, men are not taught how to be men. They essentially go off on their own and are just supposed to figure it out. But no man's just figured something out by luck, essentially, on their own. It's just not a thing.
So
There's what were we gonna
do
say?
do you think men have to be burnt to figure it out?
Burned?
Burned? Yeah.
No, not burned. So it's like, where it's like the responsibility of the father. Okay, a father is literally supposed to groom his son to become a man. But when that does not happen, he's going to go after whatever cultural ideas are put at him of what it is to be a man. He's going to be around a bunch of other boys as a teenager in college, etc., who don't know how to be a man either. and they're going to feed off of each other. Like right now, I hear the term like fuck boys, and it was on a movie that I saw, and it's just young guys who just sleep around.
Yeah.
But there's nothing manly about that. I mean, even in the times of the Roman Empire, they actually didn't even have a term for a virgin boy, because it was like as soon as you can, you were supposed to sleep around as much as you could. So, kind of bringing it back, if you have a bunch of like young kids in college who none of them know how to be a man, they're essentially just becoming adult boys who then are going out and they're looking for someone to be their second mom.
Yeah.
Okay, so they're looking for someone to fill in what mom used to do. And then you get a bunch of women who are in relationships where they literally feel like a second mom. There'll be so many actions that they'll take on, and it's like, I just feel like his mom. And
I've
now
been
someone
there.
could
I've
say,
been there in
well,
my past life.
yeah,
My past life, years it's been though. Yes.
and someone could say, well, those women aren't like drawing the line. It's like, well, they could draw a line, but if the boy doesn't know, or the man, the quote unquote man by age, the 25, the 30-year-old, doesn't actually know what it is to be a man, you don't know what you don't know. So how do you expect him to change when she's trying to draw a line? It's just going to cause tension and conflict within the relationship, because he may bring home a paycheck every day, never missed a paycheck, never missed the payment on the mortgage, etc. And he thinks that he's doing his job. He thinks he's ticking off the provider, but it's like still the wife is not in a good place because she's a mom.
Yes.
So it kind of goes with to more answer, kind of bring it back around your question, is like, from the get-go, from the very beginning, we're not fully understanding what it is to be a man. And we don't live in tribal or communal societies like we did since the beginning of time. America's culture is very individualistic. So men aren't continuously holding each other accountable. Even in the Bible, it's iron sharpens iron, just as men sharpen amongst other men. Like, we get better and we can be more masculine by sharpening our tools, by being held accountable by our brothers. But it's just not a thing that happens these days.
And I find like I'm always holding men accountable. And I know why. Like, I know why. Like, I love the woman that I am. It's because from 15 to 22, I had one person that I knew my whole life, that I was supposed to be. I feel like that's a whole life, right? Your teenage years. I explored, and I was in a committed relationship for 7 years through my youth. I had an expectation of marrying, but the universe provided something different. He passed away. So when I found myself in the dating world, right? Like, I was mourning probably for a year or two, like deeply, and more after that for decades. Though, when I went back into the dating world, then at age, 24, I'd say it took me a little time, because I felt like that's all that men wanted was physicalness. And I was into like intimacy, the body, the mind and the soul. Like, like, get to know me. Like, I want to know your hobbies. I want to like spend quality time. I want to know your thought process. And I've been like that, since a young girl. And that may have changed the trajectory of my life and my path, that I know that women that I was around, when I saw them and their behavior, I couldn't even conceive of it. And of course I would slowly shed those women away. And still to this day, I don't judge them, right? Though I am an emotional intelligence coach and a mindset coach. And I don't really believe, like you, that brings inner fulfillment. Now, I love hearing, because I think it's a really new come from the depth of where you take it till primal times, and how men are supposed to be, and how they're showing up today in our culture. And I know I have two girls and you have two boys. And, working on them, putting them in positions correctly. I'm grateful they have the foundation, though. How can we make this shift in society?
It starts in the household because I was the guy in high school, college who just wanted to sleep around.
Mm-hmm.
And that's who I was. But culturally, if you tell a boy to get married at 18, 20, or if he wants to get married, let's say he falls in love, high school sweetheart, kind of like you. And let's say he's a regular family. So not a family that's in deep faith, like a Mormon family or a Jewish family. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
99% of the time, his own parents are going to tell him he's too young to get married. Go have some fun. You're still young.
Mm.
The culture is going to tell him you're too young. Go have some fun. Live a little. When all that is doing is essentially poisoning the mind, it's devaluing all the women who he starts to sleep with. Every single one of them, their value starts to go down. He is getting just dopamine hits of instant gratification by sleeping with women, going, oh, I am young. I need experience. Maybe I do need to sleep around. And those things are going to come and haunt him later on in his marriage.
100%.
They will, hands down. The most this guy who I have much respect for, professional athlete, told me one time, the most crowded place in a marriage is the bedroom.
Hmm.
Especially if you did not respect yourself in the past by sleeping around. So we're encouraging boys not to settle down, not to get married. And when you bring up how I talk about the primal aspect, you got to think forever until very recent, maybe 150 years, because we got to think the Oregon Trail wasn't very long ago, where people literally had to survive day to day. So there was a place where men were expected to go to war on a constant basis every day. We had to literally hunt for our survival, fight for our survival. We had to make sure that the women and children were fed so we could have the benefit of reproducing and our offspring and legacy could continue. Nowadays, men don't have to go through any adversity in life. So if we don't have to go through any adversity in life that has been with us for, you could say, 315,000 years, depending on when you look at when we were exactly Homo sapiens or whatever. If you want to go off of biblical time, it doesn't matter. Forever, except 1% of the time, we had to do that. And now you have all this built up tension in boys that the only way to release it is by culturally being encouraged to sleep around. Look at social media for men, sleep around. Make as much money as you can, sleep with as much women as you can.
Yeah, and
it's like this is a terrible message.
That is a message, and I know we don't source that message, right? Like that's why we're here, putting it out there. Though for a percentage, like I'd say 95% of the population, it is that way. They are not, educated enough to know that there is a different way besides selling your body.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like the woman that I work with, and I was there at once, and I'm not going to deny it. Just like you had your history, like I was never a sleep around person, though.
Hey guys, really quick, I just wanted to take a second and thank you for listening. I appreciate you being here, and I just want to let you know that I have zero plans to ever run ads on this podcast. No interruptions, no distractions, just straight value for you. Now, if you're getting something out of this, the best way to support me is simple. Tell 2 friends about the podcast and leave a review. It helps me more than you know. And if you're looking for something even deeper, join my school community at school.com/ultimate husband, or just search High Value Life. It's for both men and women who want to level up in every area: marriage, leadership, mindset, everything. I hope to see you there.
I was definitely someone who took behaviors that weren't aligned with my soul. That like them, like men making things okay. Like I was always found myself maybe in a stable relationship, but them making their behaviors okay. Like whether it's like, all right, well, I'm going to hire my girlfriend, my ex-girlfriend to, work at my business. She's a single mom and she needs some help, and me, I'm not a jealous person who allowed this. Okay. Because I'm like, okay, like I'm secure in myself. But then seeing over time, like weeks past, me entering that place of business and their behavior changing towards me, you could see where there's a disrespect, that something is happening. And later finding out, which really changed the trajectory of my life too, into going into coaching and going into becoming a bigger stand for women for self-respect, having that like epiphany, like, oh my God, like I'm too trusting and too accepting. And it's not about me. It's about like the treatment, and I believe there can be men and women who are friends, but you got to keep that boundary. And it's up to each other to hold that boundary all the time. And you shouldn't need a friend beside your partner of that nature, like you said earlier. But like, I have always been friends with my friends' husbands and stuff, right? I mean, we could even go for a drive with the kids to the same event. Though, there's nothing in my personality or their personality that would cross boundaries. Is it possible? I don't know, because it's never happened, So it just really depends on the personal person and how they hold integrity. Because for a long time, my friend Lori and her husband, Eric, like he's like my brother. You know what I mean? Like we do things all the time together. We talk on the phone for hours, but he will never betray Lori in the sense of like, like throwing her under the bus or wrong or right. If Lori's in front of me and they're having a conversation and something that happened, but like he'll never talk about like their business together. Lori will talk about their business to me, but it doesn't go there. There's like, I guess there's a boundary, but we're like brother and sister type of relationship. And maybe it's a rare thing, though, where I want to bring it back to is there's I want to say few men in the sea like that. And to encourage women today to not accept less than what they really want in their life because it exists, though it's up to us women to hold that boundary. And I'm finding out a lot of women don't because they so want a relationship. And listen, trust me, I want a relationship, but like it's not worth the cost of me feeling I'm being disrespected or I'm not being held, in a high state.
Yeah, the having respect for yourself, holding boundaries, I think is very important. And it was something again on that call that I mentioned about all men are dogs. They all have teeth, but there's a difference between a wolf dog or a sheepdog and a wolf. And how, again, historically, women had men around them, whether it's brothers, dads, uncles, it was a community. So when a woman brought home a man, another man could tell her if he was a good or a bad guy. They could say he's a wolf or he's a sheepdog. Keep him around because sheepdogs are protectors. They look after the weak. A wolf, they're a predator, whether he's not a good guy, a narcissist, any number of things, because a woman just sees a dog with teeth
Yeah.
But it takes another man to understand if he's a sheepdog or a wolf. And we just don't
Well,
have that. Again, there's no community.
I think now I'm intelligent enough or aware enough that I could do that myself. I know
Mm-hmm.
there's no community today. Today, I feel highly knowledgeable of what that looks like, though I know it took me, lessons. It's not
Mm-hmm.
available to us when, like, oh, this person comes over and the family chips in, like you said. The man's like, get rid of him. But you also have to have
Mm-hmm.
a family who's practicing like a stoicism,
Yeah, exactly.
right? Because
Yeah,
we
and
do
and though
know,
it's like handed down generation to generation, like what you can see good and bad, and it's men, holding each other accountable to grow more men and produce more men. But when you don't have that, like you said, it's not just going to happen with a family. They're just not going to know.
Mhm. So with raising boys right now, I'm raising two
Mm-hmm.
girls, right? So with my girls, like when they're dating, like my girls are fierce. And like I know
Mm-hmm.
my older daughter, like she doesn't demand respect, but she puts respect out there. She hasn't even had a boyfriend because she's like, Mom, everybody just like wants one thing. And she's like, I'm not like that. And I said, that's fine, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And then my youngest daughter, who you met earlier, she has a little boyfriend and he's nice. He comes from a Mormon background, so he has some certain things instilled in him that are
Mm-hmm.
a bit more respectful, but I could also see him still growing into a man, which you give those
Mm-hmm.
leniencies. And now I can also guide my daughter, not to be his mother, but to be more of a supportive system for which she is willing to stand. Like, just say, he doesn't like socializing. My daughter likes socializing. Are they truly a match then? If he doesn't want to do
Mm-hmm.
these things with her,
Mm-hmm.
like,
Yeah, and I would tell anyone whether they were believers, secular, if they don't believe in any sort of God, it's like if you're if your daughter finds a good Mormon boy, you should make an exception because they're the really one of the only like groups of people these days who have actual community, have family members who are constantly holding them to standards. And it's hard to find like a good young kid. They're out there, don't get me wrong. But where social media and culture is pushing boys, it's not a good place,
yeah.
whether it's the toxic masculinity thing or if it's the sleep with as many women as you can before you get married. Like there's just a lot of bad stuff out there like that are being pushed on boys.
Yeah, I definitely experience him. He has a strong community family. And you're
Mm-hmm.
right. That's exactly what's missing in a lot of cultures.
Mm-hmm.
I was raised in Brooklyn, New York as a
Mm-hmm.
Catholic. And I really, there was like a bad reputation of Mormons, and you know this, right? Like it wasn't but
Mm-hmm.
everything has something behind it, any religion, I feel. And we really have to tap into what's true. And my kids, they went to a charter school, and it was actually started by the Mormons, called Somerset Academy here. And so there were a lot of Mormon families in there. And can I tell you, I was attracted to them all, loved them because they were
Mm-hmm.
similar to actually an Italian culture, though
Yeah.
even very similar, helping family, seeing them rise, and standing in when somebody like a guy isn't good, they're going to speak their minds, or
Mm-hmm.
or
Yeah.
show them the path that they should go on. And I'm not talking about the junkie Italians or the Mormons. Like that's what I'm saying. There's different categories of people, but these were great family oriented people. And that's all that I am attracted to. And that's really what my kids are also attracted to. And it's the foundation that we set forth for our kids. Will they come across different things? Yes. Though knowing how they're choosing, we didn't know. I know I didn't have that foundation of how I was choosing. Yes, my father married 70 years to my mother, definitely very good to my mother, very different. So I have a high expectation of what a man should be like, because my father was so good to my mother. And I'll tell you why. He had a good lesson for himself. He came from a broken family, was scared to get married. He left my mother writing wedding invitations, right? And then 9 months later, I came back to her with his father saying to marry him again. Till this day, my father's 91. He'll say, I hate that I ever made your mother feel that way. And he told me that like every year on
Mm.
that on an anniversary, that he ever provided any sadness to my mother's life. So when he did marry her, which was a year after that, he was like golden. And every
Mhm.
woman, let me tell you, wished they had a man like my father. And still
Mhm.
today in the building, he's 91, they're all chasing him. And he wouldn't
Nice.
even, and he's still practicing his stoicism. I swear to God, it's hysterical.
Oh no, that is good. I mean, we need more examples like that.
Yeah. Though, the challenge is like, I am aware of all this. The challenges are like, you know, where am I finding these, the good men are available? I just now, give it to the universe. I give it to God that now it's going to show
Mhm.
up when it's supposed to, because stoicism
Mhm.
is something very important to me. And even if,
Mhm.
if it's like, I could see if it's off immediately. And I kind of evoke that. I'm like, I call men out on that and they don't like it. I mean, I am a coach too, but I just can't help myself that I want to hold such an accountability in society.
Do you ever think that maybe due to your past experiences or your coaching, that you might have a little bit of a wall up if there is a good guy who comes?
So, if there's one, I think I'll be able to identify it now.
Okay,
I just don't think
that's
the
good.
right one has shown up.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I think that I still needed to be tested, especially with this
Mhm.
last one that I had, and I'm going to share with you. Okay, he calls me, and I knew him, and I'm like, oh, like this was the one, like, oh, no, this is the one with the other woman. Okay, like he still has a girlfriend. Okay, and he wanted to go to lunch,
Mhm.
and I go to lunch. I've gone to lunch with him before, did some coaching, and he's like, I have my list of, negotiables and non-negotiables, right? And I looked at them and I was like, interesting. He's like, do you ever have one, Marianne? I was like, of course I do. I was like, that's the first thing my own coach told me to do. It's just because we have to get to know ourselves. And he's like, can I see it? Mistake. I showed him mine, right? And he's like, wow. And I knew they were similar. I said, yes. And, in this conversation, they're similar. And he's like, wow. He's like, I didn't expect this. He's like, well, he's like, I just want you to know you are actually exactly what I want. And I'm like, that's great. He's like, well, I told so and so, I didn't love her anymore. And I said this about 8 months ago, and we're just moving on. Right. So I'm like kind of getting excited here. I'm like, oh my God, like I know this person's a good person, like just what he does in his life and whatnot. And I kind of got caught up in the moment, which I say is like my first slip ever. And in like, wow, this could be possible. And we leave, nothing, happened. He's like, and then he just starts texting me. And we start talking more. And then we had a conversation in an evening. And then I'm like, hold on. So, like, I didn't find out where he's exactly at. Like, do you guys still live together? Like, what happened? Like, you said you're in the midst of separation. Well, I had to go deeper. They're like, oh, well, we still live together. So then in my head, I'm like, okay, I lived with my ex-husband for about 4 months. You know what I mean? Then I went a step further. I'm like, where are you sleeping?
Same bed.
So then then that's when I had to immediately shut down the conversation and
Mhm.
say, listen, this is out of integrity. This is going to kill who I am as a human being. I said, and you're not to, call me like, ever again. I said, because
Mhm.
we are not aligned. You're not emotionally or physically available, and you're out of integrity. And this is the work you need to do. And this is
Yeah.
my work. This is also my work, because like it was actually disappointing, because I felt like, wow, like I revealed a lot to this person. He knows who I am. So that also felt a little stripping again for me as an integrous person and as a coach.
Hmm. Yeah, totally understandable.
So like I now know on a whole nother level the questions that need to be asked. But really, when somebody good approaches me, yes, I think I can identify it now, even going into further questioning.
Hmm. Yeah, men just don't have the virtue of being a man of honor, which
Yes,
is
I call it.
integrity, honesty. Yeah.
So how can our men uh preach that today? Because I know with women that I coach, I share with them that they have to really keep their boundaries strong if they want to change the collective in our worlds. Because that's how I think very big. I think our energy
Hmm.
is what changes the world.
Hmm.
Like somebody today, changing the subject a little, is that I was on the phone call with a client today, and he says, "What about Trump?" He's like, he's kicking ass, right? He goes, and I'm enjoying with the Democrats, whatever they're peeing their pants, whatever he said. And I said,
Hmm.
you know what? I actually am enjoying personally what Trump is doing. I said, though I am not enjoying, I don't even put my ear into what the Democrats are doing.
Yeah.
I don't even give them any of my energy. I want them to fade. And if we don't give them their energy and make it a topic of conversation, then how much more time you have to focus on what's working, because that's part of maybe what's not working. And that's not for everybody. Yes, obviously, which side that I'm on, but I'm just saying that even in relationship, we have to choose what we focus on. The woman that I coach, I had to learn these lessons. And even now,
Hmm.
it still shows up in my life, and it's always going to. But I know my purpose here is to raise the bar. Though, like you said,
Yeah.
is that intimidating for a conscious man?
I don't think it is, because if you're raising the bar, then you're only creating more high value women, because every guy wants to be with a high valued woman. So if she has a higher standard, she's not sleeping around. She's carrying herself with, you could say, big girl energy. The way that she presents herself. Every guy wants a high valued woman, but it is still us men who play a major part in devaluing women.
I love that. I love that. So, okay. So I also, like you say, they play a major part, and I say women play a major part in it as well. Though, like women
As well,
are,
yeah.
they play a major part. Though I
Hmm.
know, women are, they want to be felt like they're taken care of. And I'm not talking financially. I'm talking about all women want to be is loved, honored, and respected and wanted.
Hmm.
And, another two men I know, and these are high, um, like powerful, successful men. I had one man tell me, a client of mine, he's like, it's like I deal with so much, and all I want them to do is understand, and then they live this like kind of like princess queen life. It's like a fairy tale, their life I give them, but they can't give me, my 10 working days because, he works in other countries sometimes. I have to have grief during those times. He goes, meanwhile, when I come back, like it's all the Ritz Carlton, it's all this. I said, but there's no intimacy, there's no communication. Have you aligned their core values with yours? And I see these men are looking still not at their own core values and what they want. They get to
Hmm.
dig in and say, like, what do I really want versus what am I getting? Have you
Hmm.
discussed your lifestyle with them? And can they accept that, knowing that, hey, yeah, I may be gone 10 days, but when I come back, like, this is our life. This is who I want to spend my free time with. This is my work time. So, like,
Hmm.
really how, these men are really like searching for somebody. I mean, I was with a client, and he took somebody on a first date on New Year's Eve, right? From another country. Like,
Hmm.
and I mean, I would have thought like he's a high valued man. Like, there's no relationship that's going to happen there. And he had negative things to say. And guess what? It's only to feed his need. And this is happening so
Yeah,
much. Jesse, it's happening so much. That's why, I think women like watching you and what you represent, because well, I think all women want that. They just don't know how to navigate to get it.
you kind of touched on a couple things. What are you asking a question?
Yeah. So with your woman, like, how do they navigate to get that man? What do
How
you
does a
do?
woman
I know what
navigate
I
to get the
do.
man?
Yeah.
So, so like when you're giving me the examples of this guy who, wealthy guy traveling the world for work, but then she's not on board with the little things that he wants to do, and they want to. I often wonder if he is seeking out a good woman or if he's seeking out an arm candy, because
Mm,
they're two different things. A woman who, because you can have a good woman who's also arm candy. But if you're only picking out arm candy, are they ever able to be a good woman?
I don't
Because
think
if
so.
they only value themselves on their looks, it's like the what's the website? The OnlyFans. You got women who are making hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars, and they're only valuing themselves on temporary looks, temporary physical features, because there's tens of thousands of women who are in the funnel who can replace them at any moment, because there's always going to be 18, 20 or 21-year-old, 22-year-old women out there forever. They're not going away.
Right. So, and
And then
that's, I just want
so
to
if
say, and
this guy, if he's only valuing who the women he's choosing based off looks and not actually their morals and values and who they are, he's it's his own fault. He's not vetting the girls that he's dating, or he's trying to impress them so much with a big date that a good woman is going to say, like, this is nice, but who are you as a man?
100%. And that's exactly the conversation, I had. Like, what are you actually looking for?
Hmm.
Do you know what you want? Like, how do you want to feel? Like, who do you want to be? What are your needs from her? What do you want her needs to be from you? Like,
Hmm.
like dive deep. And, I'm finding out, like, through my process, like, there's not men, they still don't know how to dive deep. And I
Hmm.
love seeing that. I know I'm in a community of men. A lot of my coaching men, of course, they all practice. I'll say the ones that I know, stoicism. They are they
Hmm.
they are all about their wives. They're all about, the community and everything. I'm just today wondering how the dating world is so corrupt, and how people say that relationships don't work. The divorce rate is up. Yeah, take a look at, they're not in tune in what they want. And for like a woman like me today, I think for me, the reason why I'm single is because I had to go through the learning curve too myself. I had to put a high value on me. Though, when a high value man that thinks he's high value, it has nothing to do with money. Because there's another one that came to me.
Yeah.
He's like, maybe you should do an episode on, how men can get high valued women. Well, it's through practicing respect, honor, acknowledgement, love, courtesy, vulnerability. It's who you be that you're going to attract this, and what you want
Hmm.
and you put out there is what I told this gentleman, that it was a whole bunch of coaches, and he's actually really highly successful, doing a lot in the industry in the community for people. And he's looking for a high value woman. I'll grant you, I am, but like that's not a match. You know, when you match with people, there's energy, there's synergy. This is just, you have to be able to identify what you want. You have to know yourself well. And you are able to know yourself well if you take inventory of yourself and your behaviors, period.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with what you're saying. So if a man wants to marry a high valued woman, first, again, I agree with what you're saying. He has to be aware of all of his features and who he's attracting, because you don't buy a high valued woman, you attract one. So do you have emotional intelligence? Maybe you have your emotions under control, but are you able to read her body language? Are you able to help lower her cortisol levels because of something's happening? You're like, there's so much more to it. Unless you meet really young, you meet 17, 18, because then it's just all fun. But hopefully you guys are willing to grow together and admit your faults with one another and grow. But if you're going to meet later on in life, like you have to have your shit together. Otherwise, you're not getting a high value woman. You might get an arm candy who you don't even like to be around at the end of the day, but it's really good looking.
It's,
Or you have great sex and that's the only reason you go back. But then there's going to be cheating involved. There's going to be just a plethora of other problems.
yeah. So, I really believe that like everybody just really needs to get in touch with themselves today. I'm
Mm-hmm.
so tired of hearing like there's no valuable men, there's no valuable women. I think it's a lie. I think they just haven't found
I
each
think it's
other
total lie,
yet.
yeah.
I just think they haven't found each other yet, that it exists, though it's not until we start holding our boundaries and knowing ourselves well in what we're choosing. And I believe like, even, the past like, 2 years, even though I've dated three people, it's because I hold myself high and I don't think there's a block. I just believe that it'll happen exactly when it's supposed to, because it has to have a certain connection when you're at this, I'm going to be 50. you know,
Mm-hmm.
like you said, there's just no time for me to waste. And I'm not in it just for, you know, that like it's real companionship, and companionship is really about the conversation, and then everything
Yeah,
else
I
is secondary.
I personally have a view on even on dating. It's like if you're not going to marry the person, why are you wasting each other's time? I don't care if you're 20 years old. It's like, are you going to marry her?
Hmm.
No. Then why are you wasting her time if you're
Oh,
not
I
going to marry
agree.
her? Regardless of how great the 20-year-old relationship is, 20-year-old as in they're just 20 years old. I don't care how good it is. If you do not plan on marrying that girl, why are you wasting her time?
I love that. I love that. So then it's okay to ask.
Dating, because
It's okay
we got
no
to
matter.
remember, dating's a very new concept. There was a time we used to use a word called courting, where you
Yes.
would get permission to even go on a walk.
Mhm.
There's a term called chivalry,
I love
and
chivalry.
we like chivalry and courting is just gone.
Yes.
We don't do that anymore. We want to do this thing where we date as an excuse to sleep with each other until we find someone else to date.
Wow. That's so, so true. I'm glad that, I'm giving the foundation to my kids to really have chivalry in their life. People get that concept confused, like having, chivalry and courting in like codependency. No, there's interdependency still. It's still different. You could still have chivalry and no codependency.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like society has made up some stories around all of these things. And really, it's just let the man be the man and let the woman be the woman. Even if she is a working woman, like I am, like we still want to come home and we want grace. Like we just don't want to have any worries.
Yeah, I don't believe the codependency thing. That's something that they would, that I'm sure there was like a feminist group who used that you don't need that because we're not codependent on, or vice versa. No, we definitely need to bring back uh, those principles
Hmm.
into our lives as men and women and instill those into our children.
I absolutely agree. And there was something that you said, I believe, on another podcast, is that I think it was you. You said something to the nature uh, of course, I want my wife here. I don't want her working for another man. Was it you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Why would I want my wife, another man looking at her every day, or, working so closely with her every day, when no, I want her here. Like, I'm proud of her. I brought her into my life to be part of me, not for her to be part of his life and be working for him. I
Yeah.
love
So
that.
his wife can stay home with their family.
Hmm.
Yeah. So the moment that you take a woman away from the home, it's taking it's taking away for her ability to raise the kids, have an impact, to multiply a man's efforts. Now, I get that there are socioeconomic things in this country that cause people to have two incomes. Okay.
Hmm.
But if you just want to be able to buy a boat and do that vacation 2 years and you have her work, I just don't have respect for that.
Hmm.
Because if you call yourself a provider, but you force her to go out of the household, which takes away from the house, takes away from the children, takes away from you and multiplying your efforts,
Hmm.
you're not a provider. Let's get that straight. You're not. And someone else may say this isn't the 1940s. It's like, no, it's 2025.
Yeah.
Okay. It's 2025.
Hmm.
The fact that we know statistically children are better when they're with their mother. Uh, Test scores. It doesn't matter what it is. Um, the cortisol levels that are released in small boys 0 to 3 who are not around their mother because they're in daycare, and the neurological effects that it has on them,
Hmm.
the attachment issues that come with both boys and girls when they grow up because they were put in daycare at 6 weeks and then they've been raised by the school system. And then if you call yourself a man, a provider, and a leader, and you want to go on a vacation, but you have to ask the school district if it's okay, your life as a family revolves around the school system. I
Hmm.
mean, how crazy is this?
It's nuts. And
But
I'm so glad you're bringing
yeah.
this up right now, because it is. And I'm sorry, like, I blame a lot of that also on women wanting to have a bigger voice. And I think, yes, a woman should have a voice. Trust me, I'm one of them. I like having a voice, though I don't want to push the boundaries of being more than a man. I think it's nice to create like a balance, though I like chivalry. I'm not like a boss babe. Yes,
Mhm.
right now I run my own business, but I'm not like a boss babe.
Yeah,
Does that
and
to you?
people don't understand that the fact that what balance is that biologically and biblically we complement one another. We complement one another. That is balance. And yet, first, like you said, I mean, we know through um, through FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, that
Mhm.
the CIA was literally behind the feminist movement. Like
Ugh.
they were pumping so much money, putting agents. The I cannot think of her name, but the lady who led the feminist movement never even got married, never even had her own children, and is telling women that they need to go out and have their own career. Again, we can talk about women who have a career and their place in the home after this, but this is a soapbox I can talk on. Like, yeah, women going out and working for another man, it's mind blowing that any man would encourage her to do that.
Yeah,
It's so mind blowing.
I think it's a choice. If she wants to do some work, like have her create and inspire her to have her own business. I mean, that's where my
Mm-hmm.
thing was, whether it was a jewelry making business that I had, like I always just, like to create or, start a coaching business, though to really place her out in the world while raising kids. And I was lucky I got to raise my kids for 8 years prior to my divorce,
Mm-hmm.
though I was a little bitter that I had to go out into the world and just create for myself. Like that wasn't the life that I planned. I always wanted to just stay with my kids. And that was it. Though in this
Yeah, there's a reason why oxytocin is rapidly released in women when they are breastfeeding, when they're nursing, when they're literally taking care of their babies. They're flooded with oxytocin for a reason. My wife at one point thought she was going to go back to work. The
Mhm.
second that she had our little turd up in her arms, and
Oh,
she was like, "Oh my gosh!" She's like, "I don't ever want to go to work," and I was like, "Thank God!
I
I've
love
been
this.
trying to
I
tell
have to
you you're
show
not
you
going back to
this.
work."
Oh my gosh. I'm so sorry. I had to do this. My my laptop isn't plugged in here. I'm disturbing our whole session here. Thank
No,
God.
you're fine. And so, like, one other thing. Again,
Mhm.
it's 2025. A woman stays home, raises her children from birth to, we'll just say 15, we'll say 16, whatever. Statistically, women have more longevity in the workforce than men. Not saying that they work from 18 to 70 in the workforce, but
Mhm.
men usually retire earlier and women have the ability to work longer.
Yes.
Not longer total years, just in more into their years. So it's like you raise your children. Guess what? You can then go and volunteer at a children's hospital. Maybe you even be on the board of a nonprofit.
I love
You start your own business online selling trinkets, jewelry, tallow because you're into all natural products. Like there's so much that women can do when their children are at the age that they don't necessarily need mom.
that. Hmm.
And, the man is making the most amount of money in his life is about 45 years old, where he's making the most amount statistically. So then you hire a housekeeper, cleaning the house for the wife, but she's able to volunteer at the kids' school. She's getting fulfilled in other things because the kids are getting older. She's helping at the school. She's doing this. Maybe she does get a job. Maybe she goes and does whatever it is, goes and becomes a nurse.
Yeah,
There's so many things that women can still do. And then you're right back at it because 8 years later, 6 years later, your kid has his first kid or her first kid. Then you're like, grandma's here. Grandma gets to help you with whatever we want because dad doesn't have me working for the attorney being a secretary still for 40 years.
hmm.
Like, there's so much to that I could talk a long time about.
And I am so grateful that my kids had me for 8 years home, and then I went into
Mm-hmm.
they were in school. That's when I actually opened my hair salon, and I just started
Mm-hmm.
there 3 days a week, and then had two other people working there, right? And that was feeding me just fine. Though then for me it was during divorce where I had to get on my more of a working atmosphere and
Mm-hmm.
put myself out there more, which I've never minded. Though, you know, I don't feel today when I hear like women have to be so successful for successful men to be attracted to them, or when I also see that these successful women are selling their bodies.
Yeah, and just statistically, men don't care how much women make. They don't value that at all. Not only statistically from a man's point of view, we do not care. Harvard did a study in 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000, and 2010s. I don't know if they did it again in the 2020s, but men do not care. It's the last item that we look for in a woman.
So a
There's five
conscious, yeah.
characteristics.
Hmm.
It's the last one. of
Okay, I
how
want to
much
know the
money
five
she makes.
characteristics because I don't even know the five characteristics. As a coach, I do not know the five characteristics a man looks for in a woman.
Well, they want it. We look for someone who can be a caretaker. One, it's like, are you going to be a good mother? Are you going to be a good wife? So there's that one. What are they off the top of my head? I might have to look this one up from that study,
That's okay.
and
But
then,
then that goes to,
but
right, if we go to our age, you're already set. You already have your wife. You already,
mhm,
so if, you look at maybe a male friend who's in my position, we're going to be 50 years old. Like we're not looking,
mhm.
for a mother for sure.
No, we're not looking for a mother, but we're looking for a wife who still has those same features. Because
Mm,
if let's say something happens to me, you're not just going to be kicking me like and saying "cowboy up." It's like,
oh,
you know when I was fucking helping build the new porch. I fell and fucking broke my leg, and it's like, hey, I got you. Like, this is what I'm doing. I'm going to take care of you. It's just an instinctual thing. It's
got
not just for children. It's just like, how are you as a loving person instinctually?
it. Absolutely.
Because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you're not going to have children. It's like, who doesn't love like that grandma who's just like instinctually like nurturing? Everybody loves that lady.
Because
Even if it's
they're
the
there to serve each other, right? Like that's something that like my
uh-huh.
parents taught me. Like my father always says, like, I'm here to serve your mother. Like her keeping a smile on her face is keeping a smile on my face. And my mother would say the same exact thing. It's to serve each other, to be in service to, not to mother, but to be in service to.
Yeah.
Are you looking up those five?
100%. Yeah. Yeah, it's bugging me that I can't. I had them just the other day too.
No, because I think that those are really important. Bringing out those five things that should exist in a man, and I probably should exist in a woman as well. For me, it's all about the woman having boundaries, 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 self-respect, self-love, knowing that I don't believe in like going for boys' weekends once a month. I'm sorry, like things of that nature drive me crazy. Now,
So,
if you're going
so I
hunting,
got a question.
uh
Uh huh. So,
so
is this boys' thing? Are they married men, or is it the married guy with his single friends?
ooh, that's where it is. That's where I find a lot.
Okay, because if it's married men of like mindedness, and they are getting together because, again, men need men to keep each other accountable and keep each other sharp and cultivate what it is to be masculine. Now, I don't think a married man should do ever any trips with single men. I think it's highly inappropriate. You're going to be even talking about things that you would not normally talk about with other married men. There's a line of disrespect if you're constantly even hanging out with single men,
I love this.
because they have no interest in what you're doing. They just don't.
100%. That's so funny. I don't actually hang out with single women because I
Hmm.
don't like the way they talk. Even though I am a single woman, I don't have a single woman clan. I have like maybe
Gotcha.
two people that are single. The rest, I stay with couples all the time. So,
Yeah.
everybody says like,
And I found this study.
okay, let me hear it.
So the what men look for top five. So money's not even on the list.
Hmm.
So it doesn't even make the list. It's respect, physical attraction, support and appreciation, companionship. Who brings She brings like peace, not no drama, no conflict, and then the loyalty and trust.
So I love that you bring that up. That's one of them. The fourth one that you said that she brings peace and no drama. Okay,
Hmm.
so all men, I'm going to tell you because I've been on these apps and stuff, which I'm not attracted to at all. These things, these gadgets now, though they say no drama and peace. with the men I experience, they still have
Mhm.
a growth period to go through. That is
Yeah,
between
yeah.
two people. That's how you keep peace. And it's through transparency of who you be. There won't be drama
Hmm.
if you're not behaving with drama. And if there is drama, you should be able to identify that in the first, second, at most third conversation.
Yeah. And I think you saw the post that I did today about, a man's ability to actually even enforce peace.
Hmm.
I did it like, if a man's not capable of violence, is he even capable of ensuring that there's peace? But it goes into relationship outside of the physical as well. It's like, is he so emotionally and mentally strong that it's strength under control, that he doesn't allow things to brew into things that's not peace, arguments, fighting, drama, because he doesn't need to engage in drama. He doesn't need to engage in these things because he has strength under control, essentially, which is really hard for a lot of men because they want to mask with pride
Hmm.
or insecurities. And then
That's their
it just
triggers. So I get what
escalates.
you're talking about is
Yeah.
their triggers, their emotional
Hmm.
intelligence, their vulnerability.
Yeah.
They know themselves well. So these are men who have done their work or have been raised with men.
Yeah. And here's one little thing that I want to push back on you a little bit, because
Mm-hmm.
I've heard you use the word vulnerability a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't believe in vulnerability. And I'm going to
Ooh,
tell you why.
okay.
Words have meaning.
Mm-hmm.
And if we actually look at the definition of vulnerability, it of it shows a baby chick is vulnerable. So if you think of, you're a castle and you have a wall around the castle and part of the wall's knocked down, the castle is vulnerable. So by definition, vulnerable, it does mean a weakness. So the weakness allows you to be vulnerable, like the baby chick. A newborn baby cannot survive without his mother for a handful of years. So that newborn baby is vulnerable. What I like to use is humility. Like, men need to be humble. We need to admit our faults. We need to admit when we're wrong. But vulnerability, in its true sense, will put a woman in a fight or flight mode because it gives her a place of her not feeling safe and secure. If a man truly shows weakness, because the word vulnerable by definition is weakness, it's going to make her not feel safe and secure, which the number one thing that any woman wants, and it's the like pretty much the number one thing that they look for in that study, is security. Women all want security. They want to feel safe. Women don't want to breathe. They don't want to have sex if they don't feel safe and secure.
Oh, I like
It
that.
messes with their hormones, cortisol levels. But men need to be humble. They need humility, 100%. And I think on social media, we are getting this word vulnerability confused with being humble, and words do have meaning, and we need to like remember that.
Definitely believe that words have meaning, and I see the difference of how you're looking at vulnerability as that
Hmm.
weakness. And I believe, what if you put the vulnerability that I was speaking into more on
Hmm.
the ego? Is still being
Well,
humble.
so like, it's still being humble. Yeah, a humble man is a confident man and doesn't have an ego, because if we look at ego, it's something above and beyond. Like, if we look at the most high value men, the wealthiest men, um, when you see them walk into the room, there's no ego. It's that guy who made like his first buck and needs to prove everybody. And he's at the restaurant saying, you know what, the sparkling water is not sparkling enough. This wine, it's not good enough.
Hmm.
Even though it's like $500 a head plate, the guy who's the most confident, the guy who's actually rolling in the money, who's actually high value, he goes in there, zero complaints. He's appreciative. He lives at 50% plus tip. You know,
Hmm.
there's no ego. It's that guy who has something to prove because no one believes in him. Who can
Totally.
barely afford that dinner, the $500 plate dinner, anyways, who has the ego.
100%. And that's where I want to see your opinion on. That's where the ego, that man gets to learn to be vulnerable, then humbled.
Well, so then I guess the vulnerable part in that sense is a guy recognizing that he is not the shit and that he has things he has to work on.
Yeah.
Because it's one thing to admit that you are terrible at something, like, hey, man, I'm not good at this. So
Mhm.
that, this is my weakness. Like, why do you get so triggered? Because of this. All right. That's your weakness, essentially. You're getting triggered
Mhm.
and then having to work on it.
Well, yeah.
That's, I guess, an acceptable like phrase
Yeah.
in that moment, in that context.
So what about in this context? I was on the phone with a client this morning, and he's in a position. He's at his like 10 million, and he wants to 10x his 10 million. Okay, and I have connections for him. Want to connect him to people that could help him take his 10 million and 10x it. Right? Guess what?
Mm-hmm.
He feels like he's reached that status or a capacity of that, and like he's in resistance of asking for the help or the guidance. So
Yeah,
to
he
me,
just has pride.
so it's pride. I would say he gets to be vulnerable and drop his ego, thinking that how that he's going to be judged by them, that he's having a not enough conversation is what I was experiencing.
Well, so so we can both be right because the pride is the reason why he's not willing to drop the ego. And um, the thing is, the people who you're going to connect him to, they're not going to judge him on anything. He's
No.
making something up in his own head.
Yeah.
Every guy who is worth, we'll say, more than this guy's 10 million bucks
Mhm.
knows how hard it is to get to where he's at and will never judge anyone in reality. He just has something lacking in him to where he's worried about what they're going to say.
Like I've never seen him
And he
so
just
emotional today. Like he was like emotional. He's like, I'm just not emotionally like connected right now to this.
yeah, there's definitely some insecurities of some inadequate in some fashion, pride.
Yeah.
But so the word vulnerability is the fact that if you're going to use it when talking to him and you're going to use the word vulnerability, it's like, you need to let me know what it is that, like, you're doing this. Where is it that you're so vulnerable? Like, where's your weakness? What is it that's really making you not want to take this phone call to 10x?
Oh, his
Because if you just say, like, you need to be vulnerable to me, I I don't know. Again, he has pride to begin with, and when a guy has a shield with pride, they're never going to open up to admit their weakness. It's why they have the shield of pride up.
because he thinks he should know this because he's already where he's at.
Yeah. So it's like people don't want to admit their faults, which is why they have the pride up.
But it
You know, he's
what always amazes me is it doesn't matter what level we're at. There's always another level to level up at and to grow in.
Mhm.
I think we're constantly are shifting into new altitudes, to new frequencies. And as we commit to those frequencies, that's why I say, like, okay, like I could see where he's capped out. And I really feel like it's an ego thing. And I love that because you're a man, so you know a little bit better about the pride thing. So explain to
Mhm.
me, I really need to know this right now. Pride versus like ego, vulnerability, humility. Like how do those all like work together, do you think, in a man, whether it's in relationship or business?
So the pride is the guy who pride and ego are kind of similar because it's something they're making up for something. So the ego, so an ego is more something that you project, outwards. And a pride is more, there's something inside that you need a shield. You need to put a shield up for, if that makes sense. Okay, so at the restaurant, the ego guy who made his first dollar but can barely afford the $500 plate dinner. Okay, he's like, the wine's no good. Our sparkling water's not sparkling enough. Okay, ego. He has to project something out there to everybody. He has an ego, and maybe that guy still goes on to make $100 million, but he has an ego along the way. The guy with pride is that there's some sort of inadequacy in him. Maybe there's insecurity. Maybe his dad said he was never going to be good enough. Okay. And so when he reaches something that reminds him of whatever it is, he has this sense of pride and a shield that goes up to block something that's going on internally. Because a guy with a bad ego just needs a punch in the mouth, and then usually his ego's gone. Okay. But a guy with pride, that's something that you have to really pull back the layers to figure out what the true thing is inside of him.
And that's where I believe
this thing of pride.
The vulnerability piece comes in. That's where I believe the vulnerability. Like, those are the people that get to learn vulnerability, which then turns into humility.
Yeah. So if I'm the guy with pride, and the vulnerability is this, it's me coming to you and saying, when I was 8 years old, my dad came to me and said, I'll never amount to anything, and that I ruined his life. And that's the day he left my mother. And I never saw him again. And him coming forward, that's him being vulnerable, because it's like, man, I know the thing that will get to him most in life now. It's his weakness, okay? His dad, who left and said he was never amount to anything, and because I was born, I ruined his life. There's literal stories of that, or of something along those lines. That's him being vulnerable. But telling someone that they need to be vulnerable is, do they actually know what that thing is, versus pulling back the layers. So, for instance, I had a guy the other day, last week, who was like, all right, here's my problem. It's, he had a stroke, and he's like, I had high blood pressure. My cholesterol's a little high. It's because I drink sodas. And that's my cheat. I don't eat fast food. Okay. It's the sodas, right? The more I was talking to him, so it's pulling back the layers. The more that I was talking to him, pulling back the layers. He sleeps 3 hours a night for his entire life, which makes him take a crazy amount of sleeping pills. He still only does it 3 hours, which are endocrine disruptors. His hormones are all fucked up, which are fucking up his glyphosate and his triglycerides and his glucose, which is really the reason. It's not the soda. It's just like, and again, I don't work with men on men's health. It's just trying not to give you an example from one of my personal coaching clients.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when you really peel back the layers, because he thought he was being honest, I drink too much soda, man. I have a soda every single day, sometimes two. I eat healthy. I got to get rid of the soda. So, but the sleeping 3 hours is because he was a Marine. He has some PTSD that by the VA standards isn't qualified as PTSD because he doesn't hit his wife.
What?
So it's like, okay, yeah, there's certain standards of like what actually is PTSD. Like if you're physically violent.
Oh my God. Okay.
It's like, okay, PTSD. If you're not physically violent, then it's like, okay, but do you do this or this? No, then it's not PTSD. You're good. but he does. He has true PTSD of being in war. So when you peel back the layers,
Mm-hmm.
is how you're going to find it. Because if the guy being vulnerable, your guy, just is like comes up with something that maybe a legitimate reason in his head, but it's not the true root of the reason, you peeling back layers, you're just not going to find it. We're going to think we know what it is.
Yeah, well, I definitely thought my experience of him was that, being vulnerable with another man and admitting that like he
Mm-hmm.
needed some directional,
Mm-hmm.
and that there is somebody that maybe has succeeded there. He was ashamed that he hadn't succeeded that yet, and he needed help with it. So, but you're saying that's humility, which I get both of them. Both of them.
Yeah, the vulnerability is more like the state of them coming to like the open admitting it.
That's what I'm
Because
saying.
if you just tell them, yeah,
He needs to openly have this conversation with the person that I'm connecting him to, not have this conversation with me.
mm-hmm.
I wanted him to have this exact conversation with the connection. And he's like, I have to
Mm-hmm.
digest this because his ego
Mm-hmm.
and his pride is getting there. So then for
Yeah,
me, I say access your vulnerability, and then which then leads to, once the action is taken, embracing the humility. That's how
mm-hmm.
I see it. No, I want to go back
Yeah,
to this client of yours now. What I seen there was a lot of mindset stuff, like, and peeling back the layers and the mindset, like that. This was the cause. Yes, now you see all the layers. Though how that client is living that area of his life, it's definitely in all four areas. Like all his
mm-hmm.
areas of his life are similar. There has to be a lot of layers to be, I don't know what you're working on him with, but there's definitely layers there. And it's mindset. Like, even if he does have PTSD, excuse me.
Uh-huh.
Um, and like, it is not healthy sleeping 3 hours a night for any
Yeah.
for any human being. We must sleep 6 to 8 hours a night. And that is the
Mm-hmm.
greatest discipline and the self-love tool that we can have, because it's the one thing that sustains us to recuperate.
Mm-hmm.
That is the biggest recoup that we can give ourselves. And everything, for a man, for a woman, goes back to the self, in self responsibility and self love. So even women in relationship, if you don't love yourself, you're never going to be happy, even if you think a man loves you.
Totally agree.
Like all of these things goes back to, for me, constant wrapping it around to personal responsibility. And like what you said, it is blurred right now in society. The personal responsibility, like, what are we supposed to be handling? You know,
Mm-hmm.
like, so it's really just learning. Yeah, be a woman, be yourself, and know what your core values are, and just stand in those core values, and everything else will evolve from there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we touched on a lot of good stuff on this.
Yeah, good.